So, show of hands, how many people have spoken to their children today? How many of us parents? How many of us spoke to our kids today? Got it. So the last time I spoke to my son Jordan was May the 28th of 2018. And the conversation basically went like, son, I know practice starts tomorrow, have a good day, or have a good time to practice. I'll talk to you later in the week. And basically, when you got college kids, basically you talk to them, most of us, if we got kids in college, you talk to them less and less, but they really don't need you at that point. And he was in a D1 school, so he didn't need no money, so he only called me about once a week, bro. And when he needed a ride home or a ride back to school. That was May 28th. May 29th, I got a phone call, and my phone call basically said that, Mr. McNair, this is Officer such and such from the University of Maryland, campus police. There's been an incident on the field. What do you mean there's been an incident? Jordan had a seizure, and I'm sitting here saying, okay, here's a 6'5", 320-pound, size 16 shoe freshman that had every option that you could possibly imagine, from everybody in the SEC, everybody in the Big Ten, to I can just go on and on and on. The only school we hadn't had an offer from was Alabama, and as soon as he committed to Maryland, guess who was at the school 3 days later? Alabama. So at this point, while we're en route to the hospital, I'm thinking, here's a kid that's never been in the hospital. No health issues, no nothing. I'm not a panic button pusher type guy. I'm trying to keep Jordan's mom from pushing the panic button. As a mother, your child's in the hospital, of course, you're going to be worried. And when we got to the hospital that day, basically I wasn't prepared for anything that I saw, but I asked 2 questions. See, because I was the parent that I never asked questions. I asked the same 2 questions that everybody else always asks. And anybody know what those 2 questions are? No. Somebody tell me. Those of us that are parents of student athletes.
Is he alive?
No. What do we always ask?
What happened?
Come on, y'all.
Is he all right?
Is he okay?
Can they play and why aren't they playing? See, let me tell you. See, I'm real. And the thing is, I'm going to give you everything that they just said, I'm going to give it to you all the way. I'm going to give the same thing to you, but I'm going to give it to you in layman's terms. Because see, as we already mentioned, and unfortunately we had to come together because me and Ms. Tolbert, we're part of a fraternity or a sorority nobody should ever be a part of. Right. The loss of a child. Nobody should ever have to experience that, especially from something that's preventable. So, May 29th, when we walked into the hospital, I asked the athletic trainers 2 questions. Had this ever happened to you before on your watch? And I think my second question may have been, had this happened to either of you, and had this ever happened to you on your shift before on your watch? Both of them told me no. So as we spent the night in the hospital that night, Jordan was in a bear suit. So basically what a bear suit was, basically it cools your core temperature body, it cools your core body temperature down, right? So now my conversation went from, son, have a great day at practice tomorrow. Now my conversation is saying, son, if you can hear me, blink your eyes.
Wow.
Son, if you can hear me, squeeze my finger. That quick. So as we spent the night in the hospital that night, the next day they made a medical decision to airlift Jordan to the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Unit. See, I had no idea what a heat stroke was. I had no idea what heat exhaustion was. I had no idea of the statistics of how many student athletes died as a result of this type of injury, a sports injury. Because see, like so many other parents, I just trusted coaches. It's a Big Ten school. Because when the coaches were at our table a couple days before signing day in recruitment, we all sitting at George's mom's table, the kitchen table eating spaghetti. You know, coaches, they smile, and especially at that level, they smile and tell you anything you want to hear. I asked 2 questions again. Can you get some playing time? And what's your stance on mental health and substance abuse support? Because I want to drug treatment facility. So that's all I really asked. I didn't think to ask that laundry list of questions that we should be way more concerned about prior to they play or not. So when they airlifted Jordan to University of Maryland that next day, when we got to the hospital, the very first conversation, the very first doctor said, your son is really sick. And she said it in 5 different, over and over and over, just in the very first conversation. And we're saying, what do you mean? Okay, doc, I got it, he's sick. But I don't have a clue on how sick my son is. Because see, I was totally unaware, like when the group that just came in front of me, they gave some really good information. You guys asked some really fantastic questions. But let me give it to you a little bit way that we can understand. See, what I learned was when your core body temperature goes above 104 degrees, that's the equivalent of your body being in the microwave oven. You got 20 to 30 minutes to cool it down, and if you don't, all your organs start to cook. See, when Jordan and they were running gases the very first day of practice, which makes no sense to nowhere in football, right? And all of us could say, oh, when my day we did this. This ain't your day no more. This isn't our day. So what we did back then with no water, no salt tablets and all that type of stuff, you can't do that with today's kids nowadays. We can't. So while they were running gases, Jordan started to slow up on the 5th gasser. But this was the very first day of practice. The very first day of conditioning drills, and they had some coaches at that time at the University of Maryland that really had some demonic, kind of idiotic, and just really made poor decisions, right, in regards to trying to break kids and trying to play all these mental games with kids. And then when we send our kids to college, we already got them, depending on how we raise them, we already got them thinking that coaches are always right. And guess what? If coach say run through that brick wall, I'm going to run through that brick wall. But I think a lot of times what they fail to realize, if you don't make the team, you ain't coming to live with coach. You're coming back home to us. And that's the reality of college sports. But they can buy it, and we have a part to play in that. So as we had this very first conversation with the first doctor, and then as a parent or as a father, it's my fault automatically, because at the end of the day, I should have protected my son from this. Now I want to start asking questions, and now me and Tanya Jordan's mom are basically asking ourselves, what did we miss? Because we totally missed something. What did we miss? And I kept asking myself, what did we miss? Now we're having a conversation. That was Tuesday. This is Wednesday. Now Thursday they're saying something about a liver transplant. What do you mean a liver transplant? When I tell you sleepless nights, and I tell you, like, I literally had to go to medical school because I had to know what was going on with my son. Now, here comes Friday, and Friday rolled around, and Friday morning, you know, our family is in there, and we got a lot of prayer circles, and all Jordan's teammates from the time, because he was a lifelong athlete, from basketball, football. He was just a kid that could have been any of our kids. In the hospital, we got all these people, and our family is in the waiting area, and we having all these prayer circles. And the doctors on this morning told us basically, look, Jordan's liver is 85% necrosis. If we don't make a decision right now for an emergency liver transplant, he'll be dead in 6 hours. 12 hours, pardon. 12 hours. So those of us that don't know what necrosis means, that means your liver's dead. Now in my mind, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, this is Friday. He was a healthy kid Tuesday morning, what happened? Once again, I don't know nothing about statistics. I don't know how many players die every year in the NCAA as a part of predictable statistics. I have no idea about how many AAU student athletes die, how many high school student athletes die, all behind this type of injury. Had no clue. So we made a decision. We had no choice. Doc, please do what you got to do. But by this time, Jordan's hooked up to every possible life support machine you can imagine. This machine is helping his kidneys. This machine is helping his lungs. This machine is helping his liver. See, because I didn't know that the liver is just as important as the heart, if not more important than the heart, because this is your filtration system. And see, when they start talking about all of these medical terms, rhabdomyolysis and all of these types of things, anybody ever know when you work out, you ain't worked out in a while, and you don't stretch and you got that ache? That's rhabdo, that's acid. And that's usually if we do too much too quick, we don't want to go back to the gym because we back to being too much pain. That's rhabdo. See, that's when your liver can't filter that acid quick enough. And see, when your liver shuts down, them rhabdo levels go all the way up. And all of this is new to me. I've never been to medical school. The information I'm giving y'all today, I'm not a medical person, but I'm smart enough to keep medical people around me. I'm smart enough to affiliate myself with certified athletic trainers, and this is all that we do. This is all that we talk about on a consistent basis. So we had this liver transplant. And see, I had to do my research on the liver transplant because I didn't know. First they tried to give us a liver with hepatitis C, or they suggested a liver with hepatitis C. Now I gotta go do some research and figure out what hepatitis C is. I thought I knew, but again, now I gotta consider this, and I don't know, it was only God that we found the liver, or we got a liver so quick. One of Jordan's friends, Jordan went to this private school, and of course he wasn't. Most people, it's funny because people always ask me, when we talk about colleges and things like that, and they said, well, where do you get your education from? We have a prime example. I played in a golf tournament Monday. So one of my good friends, he's a coach at the University of Maryland, and we was able to coach with Morgan, both of them Qs. Any Qs in the room? All right. And they said, man, we waiting on you. And I said, boy, y'all might not accept my degrees. Why not? Mine come from SSC University. Streets Corners University. I got PhDs there. But I didn't want that for my son. There was no need for my son to experience anything of being a statistic in Baltimore cities in the 80s and the 90s. No need. I've done that for you, son. So he went to a crusty private school, right? But when we had this liver transplant, one of his friends who's doctor is a heart surgeon at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and we standing next to George William in a hospital room, and he asked me a question. He said, man, when are you gonna live at this quick? He said, man, you know how many people die every year waiting on liver transplants? I'm like, I have no clue. He said, over 5,000 every year die waiting on a new liver or a transplant. Where did they get a liver this quick? But see, now I started to know like somebody screwed up, because now when the CEO of the hospital was coming to business, right? The president of the University of Maryland school coming to business, and I'm like, wait a minute, something is afoot here. But see, I really didn't know what really happened at that particular time, because we were still trying to grapple with what happened between Tuesday and Friday. And then I started looking at the statistics, and I'm doing the research on the statistics of how long a person even lives with a liver transplant. But it was a kid that was at Towson State University in Maryland by the name of Gavin Class, right? Lyman, same thing. Went down, they had a cold water tub on the field, but what happened was they put Gavin in the tub, and the EMTs came and they took Gavin out the tub too quick. Somebody tell me what happened. Y'all tell me what happened. You know. What happened? No. Somebody else tell me what happened.
Hypothermia?
No. The core temperature shot right back up. They don't have cold water tubs at the hospital, y'all, waiting with ice in them. I told you, Jordan was in a bad suit. They got Jordan to the ER an hour and 46 minutes later. That's why we had an emergency liver transplant, because while he was on the field, nobody recognized the signs and symptoms. He steady on the inside cooking.
Wow.
So we had this liver transplant, and I remember this long hallway I used to walk down every day when you came in the main hospital entrance, and then you got to walk down this long hallway to get up to an elevator up to ICU. And this thing just seemed like it was equivalent of about 4 or 5 football fields. It got longer and longer every day. And I kept saying, wow, you know, the better he gets, the shorter it's going to get. But I'm going to get back to that. But let me finish with Gavin Class, right? So Gavin had white kid, had a heat stroke, went down, core temperature shot right back up. Gavin was close to dead as you could possibly be. Had a liver transplant. They had this machine that they had Jordan on called the ECMO machine, right? But when you're that sick, you got what they call the ICU shuffle. You can't have 2 bad shifts. 1 good shift, 1 bad shift. And that's usually how it goes. You can't have 2 bad shifts at this point. That's how sick he was. So while he had these 2 bad shifts, unfortunately, a week, maybe a week and a half, 4 years we celebrated, well, we didn't celebrate, but 4 years was, June 13th was the 4th year of George's death. So he passed on June 13th of 2018. But as a father, when Gavin Class walked in the room and him and his mom came down there to support us because it was all over the media, I said, man, you know what, he can make it, because Gavin made it. He gonna be all right. He ain't gonna play football ever again, forget that. But Gavin, 22 surgeries, had cancer, had to learn to walk again, had to learn to talk again, all these different things. And I remember I'm telling my son all the time, like, man, you and McNair, we gonna die, we multiply. And son, you can do this. You can do this. But again, God had another plan. So I got my next phone call June 13th, and probably around June the 12th, I started noticing Jordan became brain dead. And our next call, June 13th, was Mr. McNair, you probably should come to the hospital. Unfortunately, there's nothing else we can do. He's brain dead at this point. So my family met in the hospital. And it was a somber day, but something happened on the 12th when we all left the hospital. Like a piece of calm came by us. And I told y'all about this real long hallway. And for some reason, that hallway got short that day. Because at this point, one of the hardest things as a parent is letting go and letting God. I'm telling you, it sounds easy, but unfortunately, it's not. Anything but. So I've always been an advocate, and what we started was the Jordan McNair Foundation 3 days, because one of the questions, here we go, more questions. One of the questions that I kept asking myself, if I don't know these things, how many other parents, or me and Tanya and Jordan's mom don't know these things, how many other parents in America don't know these things? And that really kind of motivated us because at this point now I'm around all these white coaches, right? No offense. I'm around all these white coaches. Now I kind of heard what happened. So what happened was Jordan and them running gases, and on the 5th or 6th rep, you know, he started to slow down. When he was coming back on the 6th or 7th rep, he was, at this point, you know, he walking. So a couple of his teammates, they grabbed him and they hand him over to the athletic trainers. And then one of the athletic trainers, or the head athletic trainer, yelled, if he can't walk, drag his ass across the field. Now, of course, when that athletic trainer came into the when we had Jordan's wake, of course I grabbed him and whispered in his ear, I'm probably the last person in the world you ever want to see. But as my faith got stronger and I realized this was God's plan all along, none of us would have been willing participants in it anyway, and we had an attempt at some type of restorative justice initiative between us and this athletic trainer. And he told me what he said may not have been the right choice of words, but he was yelling at two intern athletic trainers. And he said, Mr. McNair, I got 105 kids out there. I was emphasizing to them not to let them cramp up. But see, this is all a part of our process in a sense. So we started this, and keep in mind, that's what I heard early on. And as a parent, coaches, I'm talking to y'all as parents, this session of it. I'm gonna talk to you as coaches the next time. And it's gonna sound totally different. I'm gonna tell you what it looks like from me and Michelle's side of the fence, or parent side of the fence. So we started the Jordan McNair Foundation, and I thought it was totally all about cold water tubs, right? Until we donated 300 of them from Alaska to Florida. And kids keep dying, so it ain't clearly about cold water tubs, just that. Then I realized, well, I'm talking to all these schools and I'm getting all this information, and we were very football centric at the time. And then I realized, wait a minute, track stars is dying. Basketball players are dying. Anybody pretty much on the equivalent outside, as they just said, that's exerting themselves outside could potentially be at threat or could potentially be affected by this. So as our range got a little bigger, and then I realized, wait a minute, I'm talking to high school. There's 20,000 high schools in the United States. It might take me 5 years just to get out of DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So then I realized, wait a minute, it's about legislation. So when we got our first law, like their ordinance, the JT3 ordinance, our first law was the Jordan McNair Youth Safety Protection Act in Baltimore City. Same setup, parks and recreations. However, we got a couple more trainings, right? So I'm like, okay, it's about legislation. And then I realized about legislation, the hard part about legislation or advocacy when it comes to legislation, basically ain't getting the law passed. That may be the easier part. Now I gotta let all y'all know that this law protects your kid, your kid, your kid, your kid, your kid. That's the hard part of advocacy. So 4 years later, look at our flyer in your bag. 4 years later, as of June 13th, now we got 4 laws passed. The Jordan McNair Youth Safety Protection Act. We got the that's at the AAU level. We got the Jordan McNair Act. That's it. College kids can call if they feel a 1-800 number, and they can call about coaches if they feel threatened or intimidated without any type of repercussions, right? Then you got the Jordan McNair Safe and Fair Play Act. That's the NIL law. That's where players get paid for their name, image, and likeness. That's the big thing in the NCAA right now. But at the end of the day, I could care less about player getting paid for his image and likeness. I'm more concerned about the health and wellness of student athletes not returning to play before they're ready. Or they don't feel as though a coach can threaten their scholarship because they try to rush the play. So basically it's called the notable provision. And I'm telling you, I had a reporter so mad one time because he kept trying to talk. We were doing an interview about that bill, and he kept asking me about players get paid. And I kept saying, student athlete safety. Players get paid, Mr. McNair, what you think? No, I'm worried about student athlete safety and their mental health and their physical well-being. He just got so frustrated because it was like, what you think about this? And I just kept reverting to this, and I had to apologize, but I'm like, that's where our stance is. And then our 4th law, which goes into effect July 1st, is the Elijah Gorham Act, right? Because now, This was a bill I was working on before the NIL bill, but the NIL bill took precedence to that. See, now I'm learning how to play the politics game and all these types of things. So now the Elijah Gorham Act is emergency action plans being practiced, mandated that they're practiced before every fall season and every spring season in the middle school and the high school level. And unfortunately, Elijah Gorham was a young man that passed in Maryland back in October. He had a football injury and none of the coaches were properly trained to catch him. 4 laws. Ask somebody in Maryland which one they know about. The NIL law, because that was the most popular. But we got student athlete safety from the AAU level all the way up to the collegiate level. See, the hard part about advocacy is getting the word out. See, I already told y'all I done gave 300 tubs away. See, but the thing is, I didn't have the systems in place. I didn't have a medical advisory board at that time. And when a person got a tub, we didn't have to ask them or mandate that you got to take a training before we give you anything at that time. Our hearts were in the right place. But what I learned is people don't respect free. Free has no value. They don't. I was just telling Marquise, that's like somebody saying, oh, a smartphone, and they don't tell you it's smart. All you're doing is just make calls. You can't Google, you use your GPS, your Snapchat, and all the stuff you can do with a smartphone. Where's the value right there? So one of the main things, and as we kind of got going on, one of the things that I realized was it's just not about the safety equipment. It's about emergency action plans. And see, that's what I'm ready to get into today. They asked me to tell y'all a little bit about our story. And as my introduction, we talked about it on HBO and Good Morning America. And we talked about it in millions and we got a national platform. But again, the bottom line, you already see with the fly, kids just said dying. So something got to be, there's still plenty of work to do. See, kids are dying now, we just don't deal with heat stroke. Now, but what about the kids? I can tell you from this right here. Since Jordan passed, there was another young man that passed named, I talked to his father the other day, Brady Bradford at the college level, at that August. The college deaths have gone down tremendously. But high school, as of 2021, I think we hit 23 after this was said. Probably another 20 during COVID. Always win, first day of practice. They already said it. People coming in, they ain't hydrated, right? They've been sitting on the couch, watching TV, playing video games, drinking soda. And what do we do as coaches? We want you to run. Now, somebody sent me a video of a school in Richmond, Virginia the other day. The coach asked me to follow up. They got the kids running the first day of practice, 40-40s. See how it sounds? 40-40s, the first day of practice. So they, and this is Marquise, I get the call. They send me the video, Mr. McNair, you gotta do something. And I'm like, okay. So in my mind, I feel like I can solve it all. So all I can do is make a suggestion to reach out to the school and like, hey, why don't y'all let us come in and do training? Now if they tell me kiss our butt, now I'm gonna put them on blast. 40-40 is the very first day of practice. With kids. See, now I'm ready to switch over into the coaches training now, y'all. See, they gave y'all the information. But see, let me tell you, as a coach or as a parent, if you do anything to my child or something happens to my child on your watch, it's your fault. Y'all know who Armani Bell? Y'all familiar with that story? Armani Bell is the third young lady. That was a Georgia basketball player that died. She was a basketball player in 2019. See, when I first moved to Georgia, I commuted between here and Maryland, right? When I first came down, me and my wife first came down, and I reached out to Armani's father. And I said, man, I just want to go ahead and wrap my arms around you because unfortunately I know what you're dealing with. And he's a coach at a high school down there. And I kept offering because COVID had kicked in. Nobody saw COVID coming. And it was like we had to get really creative in our advocacy process. And I would invite this brother to everything we did. I'm gonna come. And never really attended anything that we did. But somebody sent me that article last summer when they charged some two coaches with murder. See, I don't think nobody in here is a murderer, especially when it comes to kids. But I guarantee you, if something happens to my kid on your watch, you to blame. You ain't even have to be on the field, but you the coach, right? It's your fault. You the coach, right? It's your fault. You the coach, right? Yeah, it's your fault. That's how parents think. Am I right, Michelle? So now, what does it look like? Here, we're in a good opportunity right now because, see, we got to prepare ourselves because it's almost, anybody took a CPR class? You know, once you start CPR, you really can't leave. Like, damn. Now, but imagine when somebody's kid is coming to you and something happens to them, now, where you at? A family want blood, and guess what? Who am I to say that them go, and I pray that they don't get convicted of murder. Because I don't think somebody made one poor decision to say, guess what, you got to stay out here. Or one poor decision to say we're not educated on cold water tells us. One poor decision, you made a good question. Can we forego practice today? Heck yeah. Look at the humidity and the heat index. We got to be smart, y'all. All we doing with is somebody's babies. We ain't got no professional, right? We ain't got no all-stars. We all think they are, but let's be realistic. Let's make a good decision today so they can play tomorrow. They charge these folks with murder. And the crazy thing about they black. So that really hurt. Nobody wants to deal with that. I don't think that when they got up that morning, nobody's going to make a decision to say we should be out of here. But again, if we're uneducated and we don't know what we don't know, that's a position that we can put ourselves in. Now, I used to think it was strictly about cold water tells. Then I realized the more prepared that we are, the safer all our kids will be. So what does preparation and prevention look like? How many y'all, you a team mom or coach? Good. Team moms? Team mom. Got it. Let me ask you this. What's your name, sis?
Ursula.
Ursula. How many, what age you?
10.
10. Boys?
Yes.
Do you know who has asthma on your team?
Yes.
You know who got sickle cell on your team?
No.
See? Anybody know about sickle? Because that's prevalent in our community. Every person on my medical advisory board is probably, the majority of them are white. The majority of them do some type of research. And the reason that they want to connect with us is because, guess what? We can go places they can't go. And sickle cell is one of the main four causes of student athlete deaths. Ursula, hold on, I ain't finished with you yet. You know who's allergic to bee stings?
Yes.
Okay, cool. You know who's got diabetes?
No.
Okay, cool. Any reason why?
No, I haven't seen it on any of the forms that they filled out.
Got it.
The emergency information medical, I haven't seen anybody that's diabetic.
Perfect. Now, the people that have asthma, are they sitting there at their pumps to practice with
It's
them?
in my first aid kit.
Perfect. Okay. What about the people that's allergic? They're sending EpiPens?
Yes, everything. Yes.
Now, that's prevention, y'all. Because a lot of times we gotta know who these kids are, because this is the thing. We gotta be so preventive, right? We have to be so preventive that we gotta kind of beat parents to the punch. Guess what? In order for your kid to play, this is what we need. Are they diabetic? Do they have sickle cell? Because with sickle cell, basically your four main causes of death are cardiac arrest, heat-related injuries, sickle cell, and concussions. Gentleman just said it. The more educated we are, because guess what? What if a kid get past you, and then they go home and tell my mom I want to lay down and they had a concussion? Who gonna catch the blame? Again, coaches. Y'all gonna get the blame for everything. And I'm telling you, that's just, because as a parent, I wanted somebody to blame. Did I blame the coach? Yeah, I blame the coach because guess what? He created that environment to help for somebody to even tell my kid, drag his ass across the field. You created that environment. So at the end of the day, I don't want us to be in that situation. We already had somebody locally get charged with murder behind a poor decision. We don't need we don't need two things. Michelle said it earlier. We don't need another foundation with a dead child's name. We don't need one, we got plenty. And we definitely don't need anybody to be charged with murder based off a poor decision because they weren't educated. Real simple. And so, I put some bag tags in everybody's bag. There should be a bag tag on the signs and something with heat stroke. I'm going to go ahead, we're going to go outside in a minute, and we're literally going to look at the prevention and safety and signs of heat-related injuries. Because see, as the gentleman in the back just asked, that was an excellent question. It just don't start at heat stroke. It don't go from 0 to heat stroke. It goes from heat rash, heat exhaustion, sweating, panting, all these different types of things. Then we get to heat stroke. My son had a heat stroke because guess what? They let it get to that. My son had a seizure because y'all let it get to that. If y'all had caught the signs when the man stopped running or when he started slowing down, you should have known something was wrong. But that macho of college football, that machismo of college football, just went a little too far. Now, here I am standing in front of y'all, and my son is gone forever. Behind one person. And now, then what I realized was, in all these cases right here, the one consistent thing, the emergency action plan, y'all. The EAP. So guess what? We're going to learn what an emergency action plan is, right? We're going to learn how to practice an emergency action plan. We're going to break off into some groups, right? So we're going to get a variety of information today that I think everybody will walk away a lot more educated on how to keep these kids safe. So keep in mind, deaths always happen when? These tragedies always happen when? Somebody tell me.
We got prepared. We got prepared.
Always. But they always, and this is the thing, this is an interesting thing. Heat-related injuries aren't bad. They're realistic. It's going to happen. But when they're mismanaged, that's when they become tragic. When you're not prepared, that's when they become tragic. When you don't have an emergency action plan, that's when they really become tragic.
When you ignore it.
Listen to it, or when, because you ignore it. I had Jamil McLean used to play with the Baltimore Ravens. We did his clinic a couple weeks ago, about 2-3 weeks ago. And I'm steady calling his person that's putting the clinic together. We met. And the thing with safety, people take it for granted. Nobody takes student athletes safety. They don't take it serious. Until we set up the tent and they had the little kids out there first, at 6 to 10. Man, we had 25 kids come under the tent in the first 30 minutes. Now they like, Mr. McNair, can you come back every year? You can do all our camps, because a lot of times people just don't know the magnitude of student athletes. Guess what? It can happen just like that. I told you the 4 main things: cardiac arrest, heat stroke, sickle cell. Because see, with sickle cell, keep in mind, and Ursula, please, coaches, be mindful. Bottom line, I think be mindful of who has what. Because a lot of times parents aren't forthcoming. They just, look, the brother just said it. How you gonna push back and I'm trying to keep these kids safe? It's too hot out here. Come on. Tomorrow be here. It's up at the day. And the main thing y'all gotta do is make the good decision to protect yourself. Prime example, coach, you let them kids come out there, something happened to them kids, that same parent is pushing back, now it's your fault, you to blame. I'm already telling you, that's what they're gonna do. That's what we're gonna do as people, that's what we're gonna do as parents. We're gonna blame somebody. So the main thing is, like CPR, maybe I may not wanna stop. Interesting story, it's not funny. Years ago, I used to have a business, so I used to have this storage bin, right? It was like probably like a used storage or something like that. So I was coming in, and it was a guy that had died, maybe like froze to death, right? So I kind of like, my man. So when I kicked him, I put my foot on him, like to nudge him, and clearly he was dead. Did I hang around for the police? No, because you already know, once you involved, I'm in it now. So I went around to the joint, went around to the office, like, yo, Mr. Dude, baby, I think you might be, you know what I'm saying? But look, let me get out, let me get what I got, let me get out, because as soon as the police start coming up, now it's a crime scene. So now here I am. So again, I'm not saying get involved, but this is the reality of what can possibly happen. And I'm gonna tell y'all, this thing happens. It's not a matter of when it's gonna happen. Because see, I tell people like this, if you don't know what an emergency action plan is, let me give you the layman's term of an emergency action plan. We all know, fire drill, right? You got exercise. Most of us are gonna break for the exercise. When you have kids, right? When you have kids, every time you walk on that field, it's a potential for a fire. Now you gotta be prepared. Who's gonna call 911? Who's gonna call the parent? Who's gonna handle crowd control? Who's gonna handle the rest of the kids? Who's gonna do this? Who's gonna ride in the ambulance with the kid? All this is a part of an emergency action plan. Another organization I sponsor back up north. Guess what? Kid went down, and we went over this training multiple times. Kid went down, broke his tibia, older kids, broke his leg. Everybody froze. Like, so I'm starting to direct, and I don't even know. I was under the safety tent that day, and I said, somebody gonna call 911. Somebody gonna run over to the gate and let the EMTs in, right? Matter of fact, whose car is this in the driveway? Move your car so we can let these people in. Did somebody call his parents? Did somebody do this? Did somebody do that? Everybody froze. As soon as you call 911, time stands still. It took 17 minutes for the EMTs to get there that day, but it seemed like it was 34 minutes. All it took was 17. Everybody froze because they did not practice the emergency action plan. A 5-minute meeting at the beginning of every practice, at the beginning of every game, will let everybody know what they're supposed to do. Not a matter of when it happens. It's not a matter of what's going to happen. It's a matter of when it happens. And when you look at the emergency action plans, we always have to be prepared for when it happens. All right? So everybody, we're going to slide outside real quick. I was going to show y'all the video, but no need. I mean, I guess, pretty much with the information
One
we
quick
got.
second, I will say, Mr. Marty has some information for you guys outside as far as your training. When he completes your training,
Yep.
you will come back in here to get your certificate. So please come back after this training.
Stop that.